Bibliophiles of the internet, my name is Adriana and today I'm here to bring you my September wrap-up. So I didn't get to do as much with my September theme as I wanted to, which is a shame because I really planned my entire year around this idea and I just didn't get to read as many books as I would have liked. But honestly, between us readers, we could really say that about any given month. Am I right, ladies? Anyways, my theme for September was Sona Azra September, inspired by my Jaeger co-pilot Ivan, who used to be Sona Azra, but now he's changed his username, but that is not the point. This was basically my chance to read books that he had recommended to me, read books with him that we both wanted to read together, or read books that I thought he would approve of. Basically, going into this month, I knew I was gonna read a ton of great books. And I also knew that it wouldn't be humanly possible to read all of the books that Ivan's ever recommended to me because he recommends like 80% of the books that I read and own, and that definitely held true. So with all of that in mind, let's just get to it. The first book we both read together was His Majesty's Dragon by Naomi Novik. This is the first book in a 9 or 10 book historical fantasy series that's basically a retelling of the Napoleonic Wars but with dragons, and that's pretty much my favorite kind of plot synopsis as well. Imagine X, Y, and Z, but with dragons. This is about a British man named Lawrence who spent his entire career in the Royal Navy, but all of that changes when his crew captures and boards a French vessel carrying an unhatched dragon egg. Once it hatches, the dragon, named Temeraire, actually imprints on Lawrence and claims him as his rider, and that means Lawrence will have to change careers and join the Royal Air Force. This right here is good stuff. This is quality reading because Temeraire and Lawrence's relationship is everything. It just exudes light and love and trust and mutual respect. They really have my favorite kind of relationship because they both come from completely different worlds and they have drastically different perspectives, and that means they both bring something very different to the table, but that also means they both have something extremely valuable to offer the other. Lawrence is a proper Britishman. He's huge on societal propriety, on loyalty to the crown, and abiding by a personal sense of duty. Temeraire, on the other hand, is more outspoken, more of a free spirit. He has no patience for things like societal convention or the law or government. He thinks it's unnatural that there are these invisible, unspoken rules that everyone is just expected to obey. So all at once they work beautifully as a unit. They're this wonderful team. They have this symbiotic relationship that's more fulfilling to them than even familial or romantic relationships, but at the same time they're very, very different and they challenge each other constantly and allow the other one the opportunity to grow. And the writing is just next level because stylistically it fits the era of the story so well, and it kind of feels like you're reading a classic, and it's so witty, so sharp, it's very funny. There's a lightness and a buoyancy to it, but at the same time it's very action-packed. I could go on and on forever, but obviously I gave this book 5 stars. And then at the very end of the month I read Throne of Jade, also by Naomi Novik. Obviously, since this is a sequel, I can't say too much about it, but I will say that it's very different from the first book in that Temeraire and Lawrence are going on a diplomatic mission to China. So while war and tension is definitely still at the forefront, this story focuses more on growing pains because Temeraire and Lawrence have kind of hit a wall in their relationship and they're constantly being tested as they move farther and farther away from home. Which is to be expected because they're encountering different people, cultures, beliefs, different kinds of dragons who are raised and treated differently and who lead very different lives than dragons who live in the West. And of course, Temeraire has to question why that is. And even though all of that was completely necessary for the story, that just made it so much more difficult for me to read this book personally because I just care about these two so much and I only want good things for them. But this was still incredible, top of its class, and I gave it 4.5 stars. Then I read The Voyage to Magical North by Claire Fayers. This is the first book in a middle grade fantasy adventure series about 2 kids named Brian and Peter who are both without family and who decide to leave behind their old lives working for this awful wizard, and actually as they're trying to escape, they are picked up by pirates. I have not been this excited for a middle grade fantasy series in a very long time. This book is fantastic. I don't quite know how to describe it. It's so full of color and life. It's funny, it's full of great puns and jokes and one-liners. The cast is memorable and exciting and surprising, and it's a story that doesn't take itself too seriously, but at the same time has a lot of valuable things to say. And there's so much adventure jam-packed in this fantasy adventure, which I love, and so much of it feels original, fresh, creative, inventive, imaginative, and that wins major points in my book. Thematically, this book is extremely exciting because it touches on a lot of incredible things like wanting to belong, wanting to be a part of something. It also explores the fundamental role that mentors and role models play in the lives of young children and questions who gets to be these things, who is predisposed to being a role model and a mentor, who is expected to play these roles. And at its core, I think this story is really about forging your own path and telling your own story, because a lot of the young characters are really grappling with whether or not the way things have always been done in the past is the best way, and they're also wondering if the things they've always been told really hold true. Anyways, this book is incredible. I'm really not doing it justice here, but I gave it 5 stars. After that, I read How Not to Summon Your True Love by Sasha L. Miller. This is queer lit. It's about a main character named Sai who is asexual and homoromantic. He's just broken up with his boyfriend, and in that sad haze he finds this old book that's been passed down through his family, and it just so happens to be a spell book. Not believing in magic and not having anything better to do with his life, Sai decides to try a spell that says it will summon the spellcaster's true love in a matter of seconds, and that's how he summons a completely naked man straight from the shower into his dorm. And it turns out Sai summoned him from clear across the country, so now they have to go on an impromptu road trip to get him back where he belongs. This story was recommended to me by my good friend Steven, and it sounded like a ton of fun, and ultimately I'm glad I gave it a chance because it turned out to be just that. To be clear, the story is extremely short, and I think the writing leaves a lot to be desired because a lot of the stuff in the story is either super convenient or underdeveloped or both. And any kind of description was extremely lackluster, so this is not the kind of story that you get to experience viscerally, and oftentimes it felt like the characters were kind of floating in space because the scenes were not grounded enough, and also the main characters were the only ones who felt immediate and real. Everyone else felt kind of flimsy and unimportant. So there were a lot of noticeable craft issues like that, but ultimately I was still able to enjoy it. That's because the narrative voice was sharp and consistent. Sai is very sarcastic and has a very woe is me, why is this my life type of tone going on to his voice, which I love. And I also just thought that Sai and Dig were very sweet and cute, and who doesn't love a good road trip story? But more importantly, I thought this story did a good job of discussing some of the struggles that asexual people face, like, should I tell people that I'm ace? Is that going to change how people see me or think of me? Is that going to affect my college experience? Is this something that's going to make or break my relationships? And the story shows that just because you're ace doesn't necessarily mean that you're disinterested in romance. It doesn't mean that you're not attracted to people, that you're not interested in dating or having a relationship, because none of that is true. So all in all, I thought this was pretty good ace rep. It was very fun and fast paced, and ultimately I'm glad that I read it, so I gave it 3 stars. And the last thing I read in September was The Killing Moon by N.K. Jemisin. This is high fantasy. It's loosely based on Egyptian culture, and it's about this group of people called gatherers who harvest dream magic and use it to heal and soothe, but also to execute corrupt people. But the gatherers face their greatest test when they realize there is a creature called the Reaper on the loose. It's terrorizing people, hoarding dream magic, and killing innocent people on sight. First of all, this book is devastating, tragic, the worst. There was a point when I was texting Ivan and I was like, why did N.K. Jemisin's editor, agent, publicist, publishing house, whoever, approve this? Because it is not okay. It is not okay. By which I mean it's brilliant. It's so powerful because one of the main characters, Ehiru, is so good at what he does, and he's so undyingly loyal to the goddess Hananja that this whole Reaper business is really forcing him to confront the fact that the institutions he promotes, the things that he believes in, the system he's a part of, are not infallible. Just because they do what they do in the name of Hananja doesn't always mean they're going to be right, and it doesn't mean that they can't become corrupt. And you basically have to witness as he is destroyed from the inside out, as he's forced to become the thing that he fears and hates the most in order to save the only thing and the only person that he loves, which is intense. There's way too much to say and I don't have nearly enough will to live just from holding this book alone, so I'm gonna stop myself there and say I gave this book 4.5 stars. So those were all the books I read in September. Like I said, I didn't read too many things, but I still had a good reading month nonetheless. Let me know what you thought of these books if you've read them, or feel free to tell me what was your favorite thing that you read in September in the comments down below. But that is everything I had for this wrap up today. Thank you so much for watching this video. I really hope that you enjoyed it, and I will catch you on the flip side of the page.